I am Madeline Carter, 30 years old, and on the night my family gathered in a glass-walled penthouse high above Manhattan, I should have felt triumphant. I had just earned my master's degree, worked myself to the bone for every scholarship, every late-night exam. I stood at the edge of my family's world, a world paved with crystal vases and legal contracts where success was measured in degrees and trust funds, and where love was something to be bartered or withheld. If you have ever found yourself out of place among your own kin, you will know the ache that comes from always being the odd one out. My story is not just about a graduation party. It is about the things families never say and the betrayals they tuck behind perfect smiles and carefully chosen words. Among the Carters, there was always a clear order. My younger sister Lila was the family's pride, the golden child. From the time she was born, she drew the light, and the rest of us moved in her shadow. Lila had the kind of quiet beauty that made people want to lean in and listen. Before the accident, she was already the favorite blue ribbons in every childhood contest, straight A's on every report card, family photos with her at the center and the rest of us at the edges. When Lila's accident happened 11 years ago, now I was 16. It was the kind of morning you do not forget: a spilled glass of orange juice, a missed school bus, a frantic scramble across city streets. The story that got told again and again was that it was my fault. I was supposed to walk her to the bus stop. I was supposed to keep her safe. When Lila was struck by a delivery van and left paralyzed, my parents clung to that narrative not out of cruelty but because blame gave them something to hold on to. That story became my inheritance. I learned to wear guilt the way some girls wear jewelry, always there, always visible. Mother Joanne ran the Carter household with a steel will. She believed in excellence and discipline. You would never catch her unprepared. Her voice was soft but final. My Aunt Patricia, technically my mother's twin but so different in temperament, handled the family's legal affairs. At every birthday and holiday, she was the one in charge of paperwork, college funds, trust agreements, powers of attorney. Our family drama always unfolded against a backdrop of legalese. As for me, I became the reliable one. The responsible daughter, the helper, the one who kept her voice even and her feelings quiet. For years, I was the person my parents called when the roof leaked, when Lila needed tutoring, when they needed someone to call the insurance company after a medical scare. When I won a small grant to attend a summer research program, my mother smiled and said, "That's nice, Madeline. But you know Lila needs your help with her science fair project." When Lila took home a trophy, there were steak dinners and laughter. When I brought home my own, it was set aside for more important things. There were, of course, specific moments that still sting. My 18th birthday, when the party was canceled because Lila had a last-minute doctor's appointment and no one remembered to reschedule. My first semester at Columbia, when my tuition check bounced because my parents forgot to transfer funds, but the next week, Lila's adaptive technology arrived, custom-made and paid in full. Even as an adult, the patterns remained. The year I took a second job to cover my own rent. I also sent $3,000 to pay off a medical bill that arrived in Lila's name. The bank never questioned where the funds came from, neither did my family. Gratitude in the Carter house was quiet and rare. Yet, despite everything, I never truly cut myself off. Maybe it was stubborn hope or maybe just habit, but I kept helping. When Mother's investment account plummeted during the last recession, an anonymous deposit appeared, $30,000, enough to save the mortgage. When Lila needed a specialist not covered by insurance, I found a way to pay quietly without fuss, never revealing the source. My family never suspected that their safety net was actually me patching holes in their plans, even as I built my own life out of scraps. What I did not know was that my years of quiet support would not buy me loyalty. As my graduation approached, I told myself this celebration might mark a turning point. I allowed myself to hope that for once, the focus would be on what I had achieved, not what I had failed to prevent. But the Carters are skilled at hiding knives inside congratulations. The penthouse glowed with light and laughter, but beneath it all something cold and sharp waited for me. I should have seen it coming when my mother asked if I could arrive early just to discuss some family paperwork. I had no idea that this night, meant to celebrate a milestone, would be the beginning of a betrayal so public, so calculated that it would unravel everything I thought I knew about family. If you have ever been the reliable one, the overlooked one, the person who keeps giving even when there is nothing left, stay with me. What happened next will make you question everything you believe about loyalty, forgiveness, and the true price of love. If you have ever walked into a celebration only to feel a storm brewing behind every glass and smile, then you might understand the chill that followed me through the doors of that penthouse. The city sparkled outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of Manhattan painting the night gold. Inside, every surface gleamed with good taste and old money. Silver trays balanced canapes the size of coins. Waiters in crisp uniforms hovered offering champagne to guests in tailored suits and dresses that whispered luxury. On any other night, I might have been proud of my degree of my small victories. But in the Carter household, nothing ever happened without a price. My mother Joanne greeted me at the entrance with her practiced smile. "Madeline, I'm so glad you could make it," she said, kissing my cheek lightly as if I were a distant acquaintance, not her child. My Aunt Patricia was nearby holding a thick folder, her lips pursed with intent. I caught a glimpse of my sister Lila in her wheelchair near the window. She looked impossibly small in the vast cold room. She did not meet my eyes. Most of the Carter clan was already assembled, uncles and aunts, cousins flown in from Boston and Chicago, even a few friends of the family whom I barely recognized. Everyone was impeccably dressed, their faces flushed from expensive wine and easy laughter. Yet, under it all, I sensed a tension. The way people's gazes slid past mine, or how some avoided speaking to me altogether. As the night wore on, the party gathered itself into a formal circle. My mother called everyone to attention with a gentle tapping of her champagne glass. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice warm but her eyes scanning the room like a general surveying her troops. "Tonight we are not just celebrating Madeline's graduation but also honoring our family's commitment to each other, especially in times of need." I felt the first ripple of unease. I had heard this speech before, or something like it, on the nights when decisions were made about Lila's care or when new responsibilities were quietly assigned to me. My mother continued, "As you know, our beloved Lila has required special support since her accident. For years we have shouldered these burdens together." She turned toward me, her smile freezing at the edges. "But now, with Madeline's new accomplishments, it is time for her to formally take on her share of family responsibility." Aunt Patricia stepped forward, the folder open in her hands. "We have prepared a family trust agreement," she announced, the words slicing through the murmurs in the room. "This document will make Madeline the responsible party for Lila's ongoing care financially and legally. She will liquidate her graduate trust, transfer no less than $30,000 into an escrow fund, and contribute $2,000 per month for ongoing expenses." There was a moment of stunned silence. I could feel every pair of eyes on me. I just finished graduate school. I haven't even started my new job yet. You want me to Patricia cut me off, her voice cool and unyielding. "This isn't a request, it's an agreement. The family expects you to step up." After all, she glanced toward my mother, "We all remember why Lila is in this situation." A wave of heat flushed through me, then cold. The old story again. 11 years of guilt, 11 years of blame, sharpened now into legal language and public expectation. Before I could respond, my mother's voice dropped, sweet as poison. "If you refuse, we will have no choice but to make things public. The university, your new employer, even your friends deserve to know how you abandoned your own sister." She smiled almost kindly, but her words fell like a blade. "We still have friends on the scholarship committee. One email could change everything." Somewhere near the back, I caught my cousin Chloe raising her phone, half-hidden, filming. Maybe it was habit, she was always capturing moments for her social feeds, but there was a new edge in her gaze tonight. Around us, guests whispered, some watching with fascination, others with embarrassment. For a heartbeat, I considered grabbing my coat and running. But pride, or maybe just exhaustion, kept me still. I looked at Lila, who sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She did not say a word. Her silence was the cruelest part of all. For years, I had been the one to braid her hair, to sit with her through appointments, to try to fix what could not be fixed. Now she would not even look at me. My voice shook, but I forced myself to speak. "This isn't fair. I've done everything you've ever asked. Why does this have to be me? Why now?" Aunt Patricia's reply was cold and sharp. "Because, Madeline, this is what families do. You are the reason for Lila's accident. Now you pay for it. Or you walk out that door and let everyone know exactly who you are." The humiliation burned worse because it was so public, so calculated. My successes had become ammunition against me. I heard the click of another phone recording, saw the glint of interest in distant relatives' eyes. In that moment, I remembered every time I had helped them. The secret transfers, the late-night phone calls, the hope that one day I would be seen as something more than a scapegoat. I realized then I could sign the agreement, lose everything I had worked for, and still never be enough for them. Or I could refuse and risk having the truth twisted into something ugly and viral. What I did not know was that help was already on its way. In the quiet chaos after the announcement, I slipped away to the hallway and dialed my best friend Evelyn. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold the phone. "They're doing it again," I whispered. "They want me to sign everything over, or else." Evelyn's answer was steady, the anchor I needed. "Don't panic, Madeline. Let me check something. Remember that group chat from years ago, the one right after Lila's accident? I think I might have a backup." There was hope in her voice, a thread to cling to. I hung up and returned to the party. My heart hammered as I looked around the room at the people who should have loved me most but had chosen instead to make me an example. If you have ever faced a moment where the people you trusted tried to destroy you in public, you know what that terror feels like. And you know what it means to reach even in that humiliation for some scrap of justice. What none of them knew was that the story was not finished yet. Not by a long shot. If you have ever felt truly alone in a room full of relatives, you will understand what I mean when I say that the Carter penthouse never felt bigger or colder than it did that night. The lights glinted off every polished surface, but it seemed as if I stood under a spotlight, exposed and outnumbered. I could hear the low hum of gossip, second cousins murmuring, old friends pretending not to watch too closely, and Chloe's phone screen quietly glowing in the corner as she kept recording, her eyes sharp behind the lens. When I slipped away from the main room, my steps echoed against marble. I found myself in a guest bedroom, just a small sanctuary with a view of the city skyline. I closed the door and leaned against it, letting myself finally breathe. My phone vibrated, a single message from Evelyn: "Call me now." I dialed without hesitation, my hands still shaking from the confrontation. Evelyn's voice came through clear and steady, a gentle reassurance in the chaos. "I've been following the Carter family drama since college," she said, half joking, "but tonight that's a new level." Her voice turned serious. I dug through my old laptop and I think I found that group chat, the one from after Lila's accident. There are messages from your mother and from your Aunt Patricia. Some things that never lined up. A flicker of hope. I remembered the group chat. Back then, I was still a teenager, piecing my world back together after everything fell apart. But there were screenshots, even then messages about timing, about taking responsibility, things I had never fully understood. Now, after a decade, they might be my only chance at the truth. Evelyn promised to send everything she could recover. "You're not crazy, Maddie. You are never crazy. They've just been very, very good at rewriting history." Her words felt like a balm over an old wound. While I waited, I washed my face at the guest sink, staring at my own reflection. I barely recognized the person looking back at me, tired eyes, forced poise, the weight of a decade's guilt. Was this all I would ever be, someone to carry other people's burdens? I could almost hear my mother's voice, calm and cutting. "This isn't your penthouse, Madeline. You're just a temporary guest here." But a different voice rose up inside me, the voice that had helped me win scholarships, that had kept me working, double shifts, that had paid bills no one else even knew about. That voice told me that maybe, just maybe, I deserved better. I returned to the living room, holding my head as high as I could. The party had thinned, but the core group remained. My mother and Aunt Patricia were speaking in low, urgent tones. Chloe was showing someone a video on her phone, likely the very scene of my humiliation. I saw Lila alone by the window. I knelt beside her, trying to read her face. "Did you know they would do this?" I asked, my voice nearly a whisper. She would not look at me. Her silence said everything. I realized then that her quietness was not always innocence, it was also a form of protection for herself or for them. I could not be sure. Before I could say more, Chloe appeared at my side, her voice pitched low. "They're going to send the video to your new job, you know. That's what Patricia was just saying. She wants to make sure you have no choice but to sign." I felt a chill in my bones, but Chloe did not move away. Instead, she hesitated, then offered her phone. "I can send you what I've got. And look, I don't know if you remember, but my dad kept the old Carter family server. There might be more there if you need it." For the first time that night, I saw an opening. Chloe had always played both sides, sometimes loyal, sometimes self-serving, but now, for reasons of her own, she seemed willing to help. Just then, Evelyn's message arrived. My hands trembled as I opened the file, rows and rows of group chat messages from the days after Lila's accident. References to covering up the truth, to crafting the narrative, to protecting the family name at all costs. My mother's words, Patricia's instructions. Not a single mention of me neglecting my sister, just a lot of scrambling to keep this story simple, to keep the blame neat and manageable. My breath caught. Here it was, the seed of the lie that had haunted me for 11 years. I showed Chloe the messages. Her eyes widened. "If you leak this," she whispered, "the whole family will know. Not just ours, all the cousins, everyone. It'll spread." I nodded. Maybe it's time it did. Back in the main room, I stood quietly by the sideboard, scrolling through the evidence. My mother's voice floated over from across the room, icy and dismissive. "Honestly, Madeline, you should be grateful we even let you in the family photo." Patricia smirked beside her. "This is what happens when people forget their place. Blood may be thicker than water, but legal documents are thicker than both." For the first time, I did not shrink from their words. I met their gaze and held it, letting silence do my talking. For years, I had bent under the weight of their disappointment, their demands, their carefully measured cruelty. But now I had something else. The truth at last. If you've ever come to realize that your family's story about you was written in self-interest, not in love, you know what it feels like to find an ally in the most unlikely places. You know the strange comfort of seeing that you are not and never were alone. What the Carters did not realize was that the next chapter would belong to me, and that with Chloe's evidence and Evelyn's support, the story was about to turn. If you have ever found yourself at the edge of disaster, clutching hope in one hand and evidence in the other, you'll know the feeling that settled in my chest that night. The Carter penthouse was quieter now. A few guests had left, but the family, the ones who mattered, lingered like storm clouds, refusing to move on. In the corner, Layla played with the hem of her dress, her eyes distant. I saw Chloe slip away to the hallway, tapping quickly on her phone. My mother and Patricia pored over legal documents with a lawyer friend from the family's firm, voices tense and low. Back in the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed, Evelyn on speaker and Chloe hovering in the doorway. Evelyn's tone was businesslike but gentle. "Madeline, what I'm sending you now, it's not just group chat. There's a backup of the Carter family calendar from that year and a few old emails between Patricia and your mother. They discuss crafting a narrative, making sure the official story matches for insurance and that Madeline's role is clearly understood by outsiders." I stared at the screen, reading words that landed like stones in my stomach. For years, I had doubted my own memory. Had I been negligent? Did I really forget to walk Lila that day? Yet, here it was: make sure the police know Madeline was responsible for supervision. Don't mention the real reason Lila was late. Another message from Patricia: we must do what's best for the family's assets. Blame is easier when it's simple. In the midst of this revelation, Chloe's phone buzzed, a new group chat, cousins from Boston, New Jersey, and even London chiming in. "Heard there was drama at the graduation party. What's going on with Madeline? Aunt Joanne is posting weird things on Facebook about family duty." Chloe looked at me hesitant. "This is getting out of hand. Someone already leaked the video of you getting ambushed in the living room." She held up her phone, showing a grainy clip. My face shocked. Patricia pushing the papers, Joanne's threat hanging in the air. The video was already being shared in the family WhatsApp group, and Chloe whispered, "I think someone put it on Instagram." The humiliation wasn't private anymore. It had become a family spectacle. But as I scrolled through the files, Evelyn sent a new idea took root. If the Carters wanted to fight dirty, maybe it was time to fight back, not with shouting or more secrets, but with the cold clarity of proof. I asked Chloe, "Do you remember the security cameras from the old apartment?" Chloe nodded. "My dad never deletes anything. I can ask him, but it'll look suspicious if I do it. Let me talk to him as if I'm just reminiscing. Do you have any baby videos of Lila? He'll get them to me." It was a strange thing sitting in a childhood bedroom surrounded by the detritus of a family that had always expected me to quietly disappear. The messages and emails glowed on my screen. Years of gaslighting finally laid out in black and white. My mother's signature, Patricia's directives, even suggestions that they could settle everything quietly if Madeline cooperates. They had counted on my silence, my sense of duty. But tonight, I found myself growing steadier with every new piece of evidence. Evelyn sent one last message, a screenshot of the day after the accident when my mother texted Patricia. "Let's keep it simple. Madeline was supposed to watch Lila. The rest doesn't matter. Insurance will pay if she's at fault." My heart pounded. There it was, the confirmation that the narrative had always been a choice, not a fact. Suddenly, Chloe's eyes widened as she read an incoming message. "Oh my God, Madeline. Someone from the New Jersey branch just shared your video on a public family Facebook page. People are commenting already. I felt my cheeks burn, but also strangely relief. There would be no more hiding. The story would have to come out. It was Chloe who took the next step. She whispered, "If you want, I can post the group chat screenshots to the family group. Let everyone see what really happened. Not just your humiliation, but what they said about you behind closed doors. Patricia's plan, your mother's words, the cover-up. All of it." I hesitated only for a moment, then nodded. "Do it." Chloe moved quickly. In less than 10 minutes, the screenshots were live in the Carter family chat, accompanied by a short message. "For those who care about the truth, read for yourselves." There was a stunned silence on my phone. Then, as relatives digested the messages, the reactions began to pour in. Some were angry, some defensive, but many expressed shock and support. I always wondered why Madeline took the blame. This changes everything. How could Joanne do this to her own child? I returned to the living room, holding my phone tight. My mother saw me and stiffened. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her mask slipping for the first time all night. "Don't you dare drag this family through the mud." Patricia joined, her voice trembling with rage. "If you think a few texts can undo years of..." I cut her off quietly but firmly. "The story you told is not the truth. And now everyone knows." Lila turned in her chair, eyes wide with confusion. For the first time, I saw a crack in her composure. She whispered, "You mean it wasn't really your fault?" I shook my head, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. "No, Lila. It never was." If you have ever felt the ground shift beneath you when long-buried secrets come to light, you know the strange blend of fear and liberation I felt. The Carter family had always prized its image, but now that image was cracking publicly, irreversibly. What none of them yet realized was that the night was far from over. The true reckoning was about to begin. There are nights in every life that mark a before and after. The night of my graduation party became that moment for the Carter family and for me. If you have ever watched the truth burst into the open like a storm, you'll know that relief and terror can arrive together. The penthouse was no longer a sanctuary, it was a stage. And tonight, the audience was far larger than anyone had planned. After Chloe's post, the family group chat exploded. My phone buzzed and trembled in my hand as cousins, uncles, and aunts flooded the thread. "Why did you hide this from us? Patricia, is this true? Joanne, explain yourself." It was as if years of whispered suspicions and side glances had all boiled over in an instant. I stepped into the main room, my head clear for the first time in years. The lawyer friend tried to shuffle the paperwork out of sight, but Patricia's face had gone white. My mother's eyes darted to Lila and back to me, as if searching for someone to blame. Then, in a twist I never saw coming, Chloe cast the video feed to the penthouse's massive television screen. The grainy footage of my humiliation played for everyone to see, the threats, the agreement, Patricia's cold words. Then one by one the group chat screenshots flashed on the screen. Messages about shaping the narrative. Patricia's line, "Make Madeline the responsible party. Insurance will cover it." My mother's agreement, "Madeline can handle the guilt. She always does." For a long moment the room was silent except for the sound of people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Lila, pale and trembling, looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Her voice cracked barely more than a whisper. "All these years, you carried that alone." Tears streaked her cheeks. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I crouched beside her. "I tried, Lila. But the story was never allowed to change, not until now." Aunt Patricia broke first. "You ungrateful child," she snapped, trying to regain control. "After all we've done for this family, do you think anyone will believe your version? Blood is thicker than water, but legacy is thicker than either." Her voice faltered as the crowd pressed in. Someone filmed the exchange, another cousin broadcast it live. The Carter secrets were no longer private. My mother tried a different tactic, her voice turning soft, almost pleading. "Madeline, please. This isn't necessary. You're tearing the family apart for what pride? After everything we've given you." I stood, feeling years of silence and obedience falling away. "What you gave me was guilt. What you took was my freedom. But now I'm giving myself something better, the truth." I turned to the lawyer, whose hands trembled. "You can keep your agreement. I won't be signing anything tonight or ever. And if any more threats or slander come my way, you'll be hearing from my own attorney." The room, once so cold, was now tense with shifting loyalties. A few relatives approached, offering awkward apologies. Others turned on Patricia and Joanne, demanding explanations, some even expressing regret for believing the old story. The Carter legend, carefully constructed over decades, was unraveling in real time. In the middle of the chaos, Lila reached for my hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "For not asking. For not seeing." In that moment, the weight of years lifted, not all at once, but enough for me to breathe again. Chloe, always quick to sense a change in the wind, announced, "I've saved all the files. If anyone tries to erase or spin this, I'll post it everywhere." Her loyalty, self-serving as it sometimes was, became my shield. The lawyer, seeing the tide turn, gathered his papers. "I think this family has some things to discuss," he muttered, already halfway to the elevator. As I looked around the room at faces stunned or shamed, I realized that revenge for me was not about shouting or payback. It was about reclaiming my story and walking away whole. The fallout was swift. Within hours, the leaked messages had traveled across social media. Old family friends reached out with disbelief and support. A few of my cousins publicly apologized, distancing themselves from Patricia and Joanne. The story made its way to the university, but by then enough people had seen the truth that any whisper campaign fizzled out before it could do harm. For the first time in my adult life, I slept without the weight of accusation pressing on my chest. If you have ever survived being cast as the villain in someone else's story, you'll know what it means to step out of the script and speak for yourself. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to claim your freedom, even if it means losing the only family you've ever known. But, as I would soon learn, the end of one chapter is only the beginning of another. 6 months have passed since that night in the Carter penthouse, and I have come to understand that the greatest revenge is not public shame or even justice, but the quiet, steady reclaiming of one's own life. I no longer live in the shadow of old stories or wait for an apology that will never come. Instead, I rise each morning in a space that is truly mine, modest sunlit with potted herbs on the windowsill and shelves lined with books I chose for myself. My world is smaller perhaps, but richer. The air here is filled with laughter, not accusation. I spend my weekends with friends I've come to call family, people who celebrate small victories, who know my history and choose me anyway. We gather around my kitchen table, eating simple food, telling stories that are honest and sometimes messy. These new rituals are a balm for old wounds. Professionally, I've found a role that fits the shape of my ambition, not someone else's design. I work for a nonprofit that advocates for young adults with disabilities, helping them navigate a world that often wants to reduce their stories to a single line of tragedy or blame. My own journey has given me a kind of empathy I never expected. I've seen how a well-placed word, a look, can shape a life for years. I'm determined to use that knowledge to open doors for others. Sometimes in the quiet of evening, I remember the person I used to be, the girl who bent under the weight of family guilt, who answered every call, who signed her name to obligations that were never truly hers. That girl deserved better. And now at last I can be the person she always needed, brave, clear-eyed, able to walk away from what no longer serves her. As for the Carters, their world has changed. My mother and Patricia have made attempts at contact, first through relatives, then through lawyers, finally with carefully worded emails expressing regret for misunderstandings. But the power they once held over me is gone. Their messages arrive and are quietly deleted, their influence waning as the truth lingers in family memory and digital records. Lila, for her part, has begun her own journey. She reached out, hesitant but sincere, asking if we could try again, not as sisters tied by guilt, but as equals learning to forgive. We meet for coffee now and then, talking about the future, not the past. Her apology was simple: "I wish I'd asked questions sooner. I see you now. That, I think, is enough." If you have ever had to choose between loyalty and freedom, between the weight of old stories and the possibility of new ones, you know this kind of peace is hard-won. It is built not on dramatic gestures, but on 1,000 quiet choices to love yourself, to set boundaries, to trust your own memory when others would rewrite it. To anyone listening who finds themselves carrying someone else's guilt, I hope my story reminds you, you are allowed to step out of that shadow. You are allowed to claim joy, even if it means leaving behind people who once meant everything. Family, in the end, is not defined by blood or obligation, but by care freely given and respect honestly earned. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Do you believe that forgiveness is owed or that it must be earned over time? I would love to hear your thoughts, your stories. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Please share your own moments of courage in the comments below, and let's build something kinder together. My story is not unique, but it is mine. And if it helps even one person to speak up, to stand tall, to walk away from old pain and build a better life, that is all the closure I will ever need.